Hey, Southeast Missouri sports fans. Enjoy the show and want to take it on the go? You can find every episode on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, or YouTube. Tune in as they air by searching SEMO Sports Zone wherever you may be listening. Welcome to the SEMO Sports Zone presented by A-Corp Sports. This is episode 10. We have exited regular season play. David, how are we doing today?
I'm doing just fine. Hey, wait a second. Yeah, Drew Pine just threw another interception for Mizzou. Sorry, Mizzou fans. As a Notre Dame fan, I'm very familiar with that. It was a fun week for the most part. It was fun Thursday night. I mean, Thursday night was a really nice game and real close. We'll talk about that here in a little while. But Friday night was blowout Friday. It was not many close games but we move on now, and we have our district brackets, and now it's if you lose, you're playing basketball. So the stakes are up, and it's going to be interesting to see how some of these teams respond from Friday night and into districts.
Well, you got to imagine too that some of these teams they're riding high off of Friday night blowouts. Other teams are just excited to start playing basketball.
Yeah. I think some teams have already have their minds on the basketball court and not the football field. Especially you get some of these playing some of these tougher teams, and just not going your way early, you kind of check out pretty quick.
Exactly.
And, that's it's the end of the year. It's been a grind for these kids. These kids have been playing. I mean, they played most of the summer. Then you start practice in August, and some of them are, I'm sure they're kind of beat up, and they're kind of ready to. They know they're probably not going to go much further, and you're ready for basketball, ready for something different. Yeah,
and I mean too, like those kids that are playing both football and basketball, you got to think the conditioning change that you have to do.
Oh yeah. It's a big conditioning change, and that's lost on some people. But yeah, you can't just go from playing football to basketball. It takes a while to adjust, and so some of these guys are probably already thinking about that.
So let's talk about what happened in this week. I'm going to start off with Scott City at Dexter. Dexter's 9-0.
Yeah, first perfect season since '86, fourth overall, and congratulations to them. They came out, and that game was over in about 5 minutes. They came out and punched Scott City in the mouth. Scott City did not like it, and they kind of, they didn't put up much of a fight after that. There's, Dexter's just good, and Scott City, they just, I don't know, they just. I can't get a read on Scott City this year. They're kind of up and down. You're not really sure. They've got a good quarterback, and but they need some receivers. I don't know. I just can't get a read on them. But I got a read on Dexter, and Dexter's pretty good. So Dexter gets a week off, and that's going to be key for them to get guys healthy that are hurt, and they seem prime for districts.
Yeah, the weird thing about Scott City right now is that I keep thinking that they've got glimmers of being a good team. It's this weird amount of, I don't even want to say inexperienced, because they're not a fully inexperienced team, but penalties that push you back. They should have had 14 points going in that half if they didn't shoot themselves in the foot sometimes. Jackson Gloth can make passes when he needs to, but you can't just depend on Underwood to run the ball every single play. And Dexter locked in on that pretty fast. Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh yeah. I mean, Dexter, you're not going to be able to run one play against Dexter or just run one guy against Dexter and think you're going to, that's going to be your offense, because Dexter is too good. I mean, they make adjustments, and that's not going to happen. They're a very well-rounded team, and you've got to be able to beat them in several different ways if you're going to beat them. And I really thought the passing game from Scott City would be a little bit, better in this game. But at the same time, I mean, they just couldn't corral the ball. A couple of tip passes, and Dexter made them pay. And that's what a good team does.
Exactly. And too, think about it from this way. I mean, like you said, Dexter's so well-rounded. I mean, Jet Grahams is pretty much their all-star running back. Mm-hmm. And Scott City knew that, and they started to put 3 defenders on him to bring him down every time. Well, then you just start giving it to Lee Michael McDonald and, other weapons on Dexter's field that they can just run the ball the other way.
Yeah, a lot of different weapons, and we've talked about that a lot of the year. Is just, I mean, there's so many different weapons. There's not one guy who just does, has all the stats. I think Jet probably gets most of the publicity, but I mean, they've got a lot of guys there that can. I mean, they can throw it, they can run it on their sweeps, and you can run it inside with Jet. And Scott City didn't want any part of tackling him a few times. I mean, he's a hard runner, and I mean, they're just tough to defend, and plus then you flip it, and they do such a good job defensively, and man, they're just a well-rounded team, and it's going to be interesting to see how far they can go this year.
Yeah, Neely intercepted the ball twice in that game, I think, and that's really impressive to do just off of. I've seen how Jackson Gloth throws the ball, and just to be able to, get in front of that and just snag it from them. I mean, that was awesome to see.
Yeah, he makes some. I mean, he has to have like 5 or 6 interceptions this year. I think
he's got 7 on the season now.
Yeah, I start to say he's seems like every time I watch him, he's getting an interception, and they're like kind of acrobatic interceptions at times, jumping up against Park Hills. He had the one where he jumped in front of the receiver and made the really nice catch, and the one the other night was a really nice catch. I mean, I think he's a shortstop on the baseball team, and I mean, you can tell he's got the hands, and boy, he's a tough player, but they've got him all over the place.
Exactly. No, I think the biggest thing too, I know we talk about Dexter a lot, but you got it's a pretty fantastic team to watch. I think the biggest detriment that they're going to face now is how many seniors they're losing. Like I said, Lee Michael McDonald, Nolan Alford, Jet Grams, Jackson Howard, of course, all those guys are seniors. Moving in, I mean, Devin Turnbow's a junior, so he's still going to be fun to watch. He's a playmaker for sure. But I think that's the biggest thing next year is what's Dexter going to lose and how are they going to compare to the teams around them now?
Yeah, and that's kind of what the offseason's for. You have guys that step up, and maybe that we at this time last year, I don't think we were thinking Houston Neely. We were going to be talking about him right now. So I mean, guys are going to step up, and so it'll be interesting to see how they how Dexter moves forward. But they still got a lot of football. These seniors, I mean, have a lot of football in front of them if they take care of their business, and they seem to be doing that. And the districts, I saw a lot of posts on Facebook saying, kind of teary eyed. We got last home game. I'm like, you guys are going to have several more home games. I think. I don't think this season's over yet. So I think Dexter's got a good little run here ahead of them.
Yeah, especially looking at districts, how it's lining up. I mean. Yeah. They might have some issues past that, but districts, I feel like, is pretty much set in stone at this point.
Yeah, you would think that they're going to get through. I mean, we'll talk about it here in a little bit, but I mean, you would think that they would get through districts. I mean, have a good chance to get through districts unless there's an upset, and then you roll your dice. You're going to see a good team. So, so I mean, it doesn't matter who you're playing on the other side. It's going to be a good team. So you just and you know that. So you just kind of dial it in and just try to keep improving every week And Dexter seems to be getting better every week. I mean, I thought against Scott City, they looked, especially early, they looked as good as they've looked all year.
Moving on, let's talk about Sykeston at Charleston. Ended that game 14-32.
Boy, Charleston just won that rivalry game. But that was surprising to score and surprising the way that Charleston just took over that second half. Sykeston doesn't play very well away from home. They just, for some reason, when they put the whites on, they just don't play well. I really thought that Sykeston would have a chance to win that game coming off of their way they played against the second half against New Madrid, but it didn't carry over. They didn't play well. They couldn't do anything with Betts. He just ran wild on them.
Yeah, he ran for over 200 yards?
Hang on here. I've got it. I've got a lot of notes here, but yeah, he has over 238 yards on 11 carries. I mean, that's a lot. But he had big gains, and he's just tough. Once he gets in space, I mean, Sykeston doesn't have the speed to catch him. I mean, he's just a good player. We've been talking about him all year. He has over 1,000 yards on the season, all purpose. He's just he does a lot of things for him, and the 62-yard run he had right there before the half really kind of changed the game, put them ahead at halftime, and they didn't look back in the second half, and Sykeston just couldn't get anything going at all in the second half.
Yeah, Charleston, I mean, their record is very surprising to me because they're one of those also inconsistent teams, but they're inconsistent in a good way just because their losses have been big losses, but their wins like this win, I mean, they can show out when they need to.
Yeah, and they've got a good chance to make some noise in that district with St. I fully expect them to play St. Vincent in that championship. They are, and they're going to give St. Vincent some problems because they have speed that St. Vincent's not seen this year. So their speed is a game changer against a lot of teams. And the key is just getting the ball out in space and not beating themselves and not turning the ball over. And they did a really nice job against Sykes. And of course they're fired up. That those games between those two, in no matter what sport, you can almost throw the records out because it's a rivalry game, and they they don't like each other, and so you can throw it out. But Charleston was fired up, and Sykes just could not get anything going at all in the second half, and Charleston just I just felt Charleston, especially second half, just dominated that game.
Moving on, let's talk about Hayti at Malden. Ended that game 46-22.
Yeah, Javante Payne is working out pretty well at quarterback for Hayti. He had another good game. Isaiah Love had a good game. They kind of took control of it early, and it was they just kind of did what we kind of expected them to do. They're tough to stop. I will say one thing: if you're kicking the ball off to Malden, kick it out of bounds, because it seems like every game they're returning at least one kick for a touchdown, and they got another one here in this game with Tristan Moncrief, and Malden's got some explosiveness, and if they can get some defense worked out and some other things, they're a team that could be have to be dealt with the next couple of years because they've got some definite big play potential.
I always find it funny that in a year of bad special team play, Malden is excelling where everybody else is failing.
Yeah, I haven't seen many kickoff returns this year for touchdowns, but every time I watch a Malden game, I see one. They just have athletes all over the place and speed, and they just need to find that way to get them the ball in the right spots. And I think they can be very dangerous. And they showed that ability a little bit last week against Veritas, but man, they are very good at the special teams kickoff returns and stuff. That they are really tough.
Do you think? Circumstance aside, with Javante Payne being QB1 for Hayti, do you think that's been a positive change? It's not like you have another option, but he seems to be doing very well.
Yeah, he seems to be doing okay. There was a lot of turnovers in this game for both teams, and I don't know if you have that, if backup quarterbacks and people are just out of position and stuff. So I don't know if you quite have the turnovers. So I don't know if it's a good thing, but it's not been a bad thing. He's definitely stepped in and has definitely done the job. They're still explosive. They've had 62 points last week, 46 this week. They're certainly not slowing down any. But I think when it comes down to your if you can get to play St. Vincent, I think it'll have an impact there. I think you would want your full complement against a team like St. Vincent, and not having your starting quarterback would be a big problem.
Yeah, as long as that doesn't get you down, take it for what it is. 4-5 isn't the best record possible, but from what we expected from Hayti, it's better than last year.
Yeah, and I haven't looked much about I think they played Van Far in the first round. I haven't looked much about them, but you would think that they've got a good chance to win that game. And so then you would play probably St. Vincent again, and St. Vincent beat them the first time, but it wasn't just a complete blowout. I think it was no score at halftime. It was they've got a shot, and so just try to keep improving, and obviously that Payne, you're going to go forward with Payne, so just keep, and maybe it does end up being a benefit for them.
Moving on, Festus at Jackson, both teams 7-2, ended that game 7-43.
Yeah, I was surprised at the score. I wasn't surprised Jackson won, but I was surprised they won by that much. Their defense is getting better and better. They didn't allow a point in this game. The only points Festus got was on a pick six. Their defense is, and Festus has a good offense, but Jackson just completely shut them down, and really, they just continue to get better, and that's good for them. They've got a really good chance to win their district, once again. But I think they had 3 interceptions, a blocked punt, a blocked field goal, and that's just pretty impressive. I know we talk about their offense a lot, but and we talked early in the year about their defense. They couldn't stop anybody. Well, they're stopping people now, and they've just really improved on that side of the ball.
Yeah, we expected Jackson to be good. It's finally nice to see them come into that role that we thought they were going to be at, especially at the beginning of the year. Like you said, we were kind of knocking on their defense with those 2 losses. But, the more I look at it, the more I just consider it's like those 2 losses, you really can't take too much stock in them.
No, I mean, obviously Cardinal Ritter is very good, although they did lose, the other night to Luther North to snap their 31 game winning streak or something. But and then of course Edwardsville is real good. They took East St. Louis to the wire, and then East St. Louis just played IMG Academy out of Florida and lost in overtime. So I'm like, those are obviously some really good teams that they lost to. So we may have not realized they were as good as what they were at that time whenever they're losing that way. But Jackson, I mean, obviously they're improving each week, and if their defense plays like this, they're going to be tough to beat in districts. And they get this week off to rest and rest up and get some of their injured guys back. And man, they're going to be a tough team to beat when they play probably Lindbergh in a couple weeks. Yeah,
I want to see where Jackson goes this year. I don't know how much of a run they're going to make, but districts, I mean, obviously they're going to be a player for sure. Moving on, let's talk about, this is a rough one. Kennett at Cape Central, 0-56.
Yeah, I mean, we knew it was going to be bad. I mean, Cape Central, they scored every time they had the ball. They got a lot of their younger guys in there. Torrance Murray, I mean, he came in and had over 100 yards and a couple of touchdowns. They kind of had to rest some of their starters. They've got a lot of injuries that they're trying to get guys back. And so this was a good game for them just to work some of these younger guys in, and it shows that they've got some good younger guys coming up too. For Kennett, though, it's just been a tough year. And, I mean, there's just not much you can say that we haven't already said. Young, a lot of injuries, and, I don't know, just not much you can say at that point.
Yeah, it's a rough situation. I mean, good for Cape Central, though. This is, for a final regular season game, the time to show out. I mean, you get that. I don't know how helpful it is for you to play a team like Kennett at this point, knowing what your district's going to be like. That Cardinal Ritter game, where if that matchup ends up happening, I mean, that's always a looming threat.
Yeah, I think for this is just keep your injured guys, out so you don't get anybody hurt, and then get your younger guys some experience where, if they do have to step up, in one of these games, they've got some Friday night experience. I think that's the best thing for them right now. But the fact that they were able to hold some guys out, and I think that's the biggest thing for them is they can win, and they could probably do the same thing this Friday night coming up, and hold some guys out, and then be healthy going into your semifinal and possibly championship.
Moving on, Fredericktown at East Prairie ended that game 0-39.
I didn't get many eyes on this. I talked to a couple people that were there, and they just said East Prairie just came out, ran the ball, and just dominated this game. And it's not surprising. East Prairie just continues to get better each week, and they're a very physical football team, and it's just kind of what you expect from an East Prairie right now. It's going to be interesting to see them going into districts as well, because they're a team that I think they've improved more than any team in Southeast Missouri from the beginning of the season to now. And I think that I mean, man, they get a rematch with Scott City, and they're playing really well right now, and I would not want to have to face them.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's part and parcel to things. I mean, we kind of saw glimmers of this. And this is talking about another sport, but a lot of those kids are on the football team that were on the basketball team. East Prairie improved during basketball play, but you got to think too. We talked about the coaching carousel of all the new coaches coming in, and it's pretty obvious East Prairie has some physical talent. But I think one of the biggest playmakers for that team is Ian Penrod, and because you got to look at all these new coaches coming in and the records that the teams that they're on are having. Ian Penrod's just kind of taken what physical talent he has and pushed them to this 7-2 record.
Yeah, and you kind of instituted that physicality mentality, and they're going to be physical, they're going to be tougher than you, and that seems to be the recipe for them at East Prairie, and they've kind of jumped on it, and everybody's jumped on board, and they are they're excelling right now. They're impressive pretty much every week they play. I was impressed with them, even though they lost to Dexter. I thought they played Dexter close in the first half. They just didn't have, the depth that Dexter had. Dexter kind of pulled away there in the second half, but they were in that game with Dexter just as much as any team has been this year with this played Dexter. So, they're a good football team, and whenever districts they got a chance to surprise some people in that district.
Yeah, I'm actually really looking forward to see what they do. I don't know how far they'll go, but any game that East Prairie gets to play in districts, I mean, that's a win for the program.
Yep.
Moving on, let's talk about Kelly at Chaffee, 48-0.
Yeah, Chaffee just didn't have it in this game, and Kelly did. Kelly came out fired up, and they were ready to go. They're kind of, again, and that's another rivalry game, and Kelly just jumped on them quick and were able to just pretty much do what they wanted. Skylar Still, he had a big game. Grant Burleson set the record for most receiving yards in a season for him, and those two make them go, especially Skylar Still. And for them, the important thing for them is just to give. If Skylar Still has time to throw the ball, he's going to pick you apart, and he's good at running the ball as well. And they just did what they wanted, and they've got a 2-game win streak now with 2 big wins going into districts and a rematch with New Madrid. So, they're kind of heading in the right direction.
I don't know how to feel about Kelly as a team because they have glimmers of being a very good team, and then they have glimmers of being a very bad team. And I feel like every time I get high on them, I get baited, and then they have a big loss right afterwards. So, I mean, their weapons are good. I'm not gonna downplay that at all, but I needed to see a little more consistency.
Comes down to line play, I think, with Kelly. I mean, if they can win the line of scrimmage, then they're going to have a lot of success. When the games when they're kind of outmatched on the line of scrimmage, they don't do well. And that's kind of been what's happened to them all year. And they dominated the line of scrimmage against Chaffee, and they were able to do whatever they wanted. So I think that's the big key for them. And it kind of, it's a key for a lot of teams as well, but especially for Kelly, for what they want to do with the play action game and with Skylar Still getting out in space. If he can't get out in space because he's being pressured, then you just it's hard to run your offense. And I think that's kind of what they run into at times.
Moving on, St. Genevieve at Crothersville ended that game 20-42.
Yeah, Crothersville, I mean, that's a good win for Crothersville. Had a big second half there. It was, they play so well in the second half. If you don't, if you're close in that first half, I mean, they're going to come out in the second half, and they usually win that second half. So, a good win for them going into districts. I know that they've got Valley circled on their calendar, but they're going to have a couple other games before then. But man, the St. Genevieve team, they're not a bad team, and Crothersville kind of took it to them and used their athleticism to win it, and that's kind of been their recipe all year.
Exactly. I mean, that's the big thing I think to look at is that this wasn't a game of like, did St. Genevieve play bad? It was how good did Crothersville play? I mean, especially given that they're Class 2. I mean, you got to just admit the athletic talent that Crothersville brings to every competition that they're doing.
Yeah, they're going to be more athletic than pretty much any team they're going to play, and and they know how to use those athletes. They know how to get Sammy Bryant out in space. They know, he's probably one of the best runners in Southeast Missouri. I mean, he might have a chance to be one of the finalists for the Carr Trophy this year. They've got Jermonte Alexander, who's he's great on both sides of the ball. Just and they've got guys like that up and down the roster, and they know how to use those athletes. And man, they're a tough team.
Yeah, and I think to their credit, that's what we've been saying about them all year. Mm-hmm. So that 8-1 record, I mean, it shows just how consistent they are, and I think that's the big thing between all these teams. The teams that have a better record in their regular season, they're all super consistent. And the teams that are playing worse, I mean, they're either consistently not very good, or they just have those like glimmers of being a good team, and that's it. So I think for Crothersville, I mean, it's a great win for them, obviously, but it really just goes to show it's like their fundamentals are there, their athletic talent is there, and they can bring that into every contest.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and they're fun to watch. On top of that, they just they can break the big play at any time, and or they can grind it out. They can throw the ball a little bit with Guest as their quarterback, and they just don't have to a lot. And the only loss that they have, you talk about consistency, the only loss they had was on the road in a monsoon.
Yeah,
I mean, and who knows what happens if that game gets played in normal conditions. So yeah, I mean, they've just been very consistent and been, obviously we have them ranked in the top 5 all year long, and they're just one of the best teams in Southeast Missouri this year.
Yeah, I mean, I have coworkers that tell me that's like Cartersville's good, but once they play Valley, I mean, of course, Valley has that game. And it's like the only time I've seen them play Valley has been, like you said, in complete rain conditions. It's like, I don't know how they're going to play against Valley in a legitimate game.
You can say that pretty much about almost any team in Southeast Missouri. Yeah, except when you play Valley. I mean,
True.
Valley's going to beat most teams in Southeast Missouri. So you can say that about anybody. So, yeah, I mean, just because they lost up there in a monsoon, that doesn't make me think any less of them as a football team. And I want to see them play in normal conditions whenever they can get out and use their speed a little bit more.
Moving on, we both saw this game. Portageville at New Madrid County Central ended that game 27-28.
At least we saw one good game this weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a good game. I mean, it was a close game. It was, a lot of mistakes, a lot of penalties. Wow, a lot of penalties.
A lot of penalties.
And it just you couldn't get into any kind of flow, especially in that first half. It just seemed like there was a penalty on every play. But, it was a game of momentum. New Madrid had the momentum, and then Portageville got it back there at the end of the first half and then took over, and then about late second half, finally New Madrid kind of made a few plays. There was the big tackle, the big play I thought was when Jack Pipkin made the sack on the Portageville quarterback and made it 3rd and long instead of keeping them on schedule. Then the next play they had to throw the pass to try to get the first down. The interception that was returned down to about the 3 by Malachi Hughes. I think that was a big play in the game that kind of completely changed the momentum, and it was all New Madrid after that. And of course, then the kick by Jan Klossheim, I think, he's from Germany. Germany exchange student. He'll have a nice story to tell when he goes back home.
Yeah, his post game, he said it to the coach. He said he'd written down on a piece of paper that his prediction was to get a 3-pointer and win a game by 1 point. So
there you go.
I mean, hey, you're seeing the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is like, our whole broadcast team was super hyped up about that, of just like, we can't believe it finally happened, that a 3-pointer really decided a game.
Field goal actually won a game.
Otherwise, I mean, my biggest note and takeaway was New Madrid's defense played lights out against Portageville, and they kind of had to. I mean, Portageville tried to do what Portageville does, of just run the ball down your throat. And the amount of times I saw New Madrid just stop that dead in its tracks was great. Their offense, otherwise, I mean, I didn't feel like they played great.
No.
They kind of eked out this win, but
Yeah, and Portageville really hurt them not having Jay Bogan, who's he's out for the season with the knee injury, and so that kind of hurt them as well. But at the same time, but they would line up in their heavy set, and that is something that is really New Madrid has struggled with all year long. Is whenever they line up in the the heavy sets, and like East Prairie did, Portageville did it last year, and New Madrid just really struggled with that. Well, Thursday night they were able to shut that down, especially in the second half, and that they finally were able to stop a running game and once that happened, and then Portageville's quarterback, of course, he got Riley Parton, he got hurt right there before on their last drive, and they brought in the backup, and he threw the interception. And boy, he's got an arm. The backup, he's got a really good arm. But it's just a really nice play and by New Madrid to get that interception and just to end the game. But I thought it was a well played game, and kind of was hoping that we'd see it again in districts, but it didn't work out that way. But yeah, it was a really nice game, and I thought New Madrid kind of overcame adversity. They handled adversity for the first time this year, whenever they and handled it well, and that I thought that was a difference in the game.
Yeah, I think to their credit too, they didn't let anything Portageville did really rattle them, and they changed up their defensive scheming when they had to.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that's been one of the biggest detriments to New Madrid's play has been. Once somebody finds a play that works on you, they just keep running it over and over and over, and that's how they win a game. But New Madrid finally broke that streak of letting that happen, and they switched up their defensive play, and I think that pulled it out for them.
Yeah, that second half they just could not run out of that heavy, and that that was a big part of the game, because that's what Portageville wanted to do, is to grind out, get the lead and then grind out the game, and it just didn't happen. And New Madrid, kudos to them for being able to fight back and win that game. Whenever you kind of thought there about midway through the mid to late third quarter that this Portageville was going to pull away and win the game, but New Madrid was able to make the big plays when they needed to.
All right, let's segue into power rankings. I have a contentious pick. My number one, though, is Jackson.
Yeah, Jackson's mine, too. And I'm going to stick with Cape Central as my number 2. And
I took Dexter for my number 2.
And that is fair. I mean, Dexter, I mean, there's not much to me separating Cape Central and Dexter, except I just go, if I test is, I just think Cape Central would beat Dexter in a game. I think it would be close, but that's just kind of why I'll go Cape Central 2 and Dexter 3, but I'm not far from being with you and putting Dexter at 2.
It's kind of a dream matchup at this point to think about, just because, I mean, I see a lot of comparisons between these two teams. They're very similar. I think the only thing that Cape Central would eke out a win with is depth. I think they've got a lot more. I mean, of course, they've got a lot more players to pick from. Mm-hmm. But I think Dexter overall, like, their physical talent has just impressed me, and their ability to change up scheming. Like I said, if Jet Grams gets 3 defenders pulling him to the ground, then the next time they have the ball, they're either going to throw it or they're going to give it to one of their other 2 weapons on the sides. And I think that's one of the big things that, like, Dexter is really, you can't, they're not a one-dimensional offense or defense for that matter. So I think it would be a very close game. I'll say that. It'd be extremely close. But I'm taking Dexter for my number 2. I just think I just really enjoy seeing them play. And I think they're a powerhouse team.
Yeah, I do too. Both of them. I enjoy seeing both of them play, and they're really, again, like you said. I mean, really, it's semantics 2, 3. I mean, because they're both really, really good, and you can't go wrong with either one of them at 2. And like I said, Dexter at the beginning of the year, I was like, Cape was my clear number 2, mm-hmm. And it's been getting closer and closer each and every week, and the injuries are playing a part with Cape Central, where Dexter is fairly healthy. And so that's actually another thing to look at, is because is Cape Central going to get some of their guys back that they've been missing, because they're key guys.
Just narrative wise too, you got to think about it. Chad Jamerson is from this Cape Central coaching tree now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he was there for a year or 2 after he left East Prairie. Yeah, that's true. I forgot about that. But,
so you got to think about what he's taken from Kent Gibbs into his current squad. Moving on, of course, I've taken Crothersville as my number 4.
Yeah, Crothersville's my number 4 as well. That they've pretty much slotted themselves into that, and I can't see them moving out of that spot.
And my number 5, I've taken East Prairie.
Same here. I mean, East Prairie is definitely. I mean, they weren't even on our radar, I think, when the season started. And now we've got them up at number 5.
And now my 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. It might seem formulaic, but I'm kind of just going off records a lot. But my number 6, I've taken Charleston.
That was my number 6. And after my number 6, I'm like, I don't think any of them need to be ranked after 6. I'm like, I struggled ranking any of them after Charleston. But mm-hmm. but that's not what we do. We do the rankings at the top 10, and that's what we're going to do here. So my number 7 is Sykeston, even though they just lost to Charleston. I mean, I beating New Madrid, I got them ahead, and so got them at 7.
I took Scott City. I don't really understand your Sykeston pick anymore. I'm not going to fault you for it. You do you. I feel like you know ball a little bit more than I do. But I've taken Scott City for my number 7, and I've taken New Madrid for my number 8.
I've got New Madrid as my number 8, and I don't have Scott City on mine at all, because you lose 62-7. I'm not ranking you. I'm not ranking you. Not unless it's in the playoffs. So I don't have them. And with that in mind, they lost to Hayti and they lost to Portersville. And so mine go New Madrid, Hayti, Portersville.
Just remind me, what did Sykeston do against Dexter?
They lost. It was 40-something-7 or something.
Okay.
Or was it 62-7?
Okay.
Yeah, not 62-7.
All right. My number 9, I've taken Portersville.
Yeah, and like I said, my number 9 is Hayti, because I think Hayti beat Portersville, or did they not? No, Portersville beat Hayti. So I'm going to go with you then. I'm going to go Portersville over Hayti then. And then Hayti is my 10.
I have kind of a 10A, 10B. It's a toss-up at this point. But my 10A is Hayti and my 10B is Kelly. But I don't know.
Yeah. and I don't think any of them deserve to be ranked after 6. I just don't. I've got a lot of scribbles here, and yeah, I mean, I do have Sykes, and just because they beat New Madrid just beat Portersville. I mean, if you just kind of just go on the last couple of weeks, Sykes almost beat Poplar Bluff. I mean, they're playing. I just think they're playing better. And Scott City, like I said, you lose 62-7. I struggle to rank you to beat anybody. I don't care who you lose to. 62-7 is a lot, and when it's this close, just minuscule, I just can't put them in there.
That's fair.
And next week they could very well be back right in there, number 7. I don't know.
Like I said, I mean, personal anecdote. Scott City should have gotten 14 points by that half. So they should have done a little bit more than just 7. Okay. That's it. Let's look ahead at district championship. And we've talked about a few of these games a little bit. Let's start with Class 1. And we're just going to kind of pick out some marquee games, not talk about the whole bracket or anything. But so let's talk about first up, Crystal City at Malden.
I mean, I would assume Crystal City would win this game. Crystal City took Malden. I mean, honestly though, Crystal City and when they played Sykeston earlier, it was close, and Malden played Sykeston close for a while. I mean, so it could be close. It's a tough drive up to Crystal City. You know, Malden's going to have a good basketball season. Maybe looking a little toward basketball season. So I would think Crystal City would win that game.
Is it at Crystal City? Sorry,
Yeah, it's going to be at whoever the higher seed is, or whoever the better seed is.
Oh, okay.
So they'll host.
I know. There's been, when we talk about the brackets at the office too, people have said, but it's always been like this. But now they've changed up rules a little bit for this year too, because now it's who's the better seed and who's hosted less.
Yeah, I think that maybe go. I think first round is who's the better seed. So I'm pretty sure Crystal City is going to host Malden in that one, and yeah, I mean that's a long drive from Malden when basketball season's right around the corner, and I mean plus you have a week off, so basketball practice will have started by the time I think they play, so or we'll start like right after. So
this game's already been determined for you then.
Yeah. Most of these games I've kind of already slotted in who's going to win till at least the first round, I think.
Not to skip over Hayti, but Hayti at Van Fair looks like. Van Fair is 7-2, so that's I don't know what they look like as a team, but that sounds like it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I haven't looked at them. I don't know anything about them. I don't even know where they are as far as, in the state. So I don't know much about that. I really can't say anything about that game. I'll look at that this week, and then we'll come back when we make our picks next week, and I'll have more on that one. But I just don't know. I mean, Hayti, you would think Hayti is going to be tough to beat in any game in Class 1 just because of their speed and athleticism. So, but yeah, that seems like with a 4-5 game, it ought to be a good game.
Yeah, I mean, you're hoping for a close game regardless.
Yeah.
Moving on, Chaffee at Charleston.
They've already played this game once this year, and I think it was pretty clear who the better team was. I think that'll be the looking at this district. I mean, I think it's going to be a Charleston St. Vincent championship. I really do, and who knows? Charleston's got some speed that like St. Vincent's not seen this year. So I think those are the two class teams in this district.
I mean, of course, play every game like it's the most important game that you can play. But I think I can agree with you there. I think Charleston's probably circling St. Vincent as being their final opponent for the year, if nothing else. So, I've heard you say puncher's chance, but we both saw how that went.
Yeah. Punchers. Scott City was punched in the mouth, knocked all the way out of my rankings.
All right, moving on. Let's go to District 2 or Class 2.
Yeah, Class 2 District 1, Valley, I think there's a clear number one in this one, obviously, beating Crothersville. But, Crothersville against Portersville this week, I think, they played this game, last week, last Saturday. And, I don't see why it'd be any different.
I don't either. I think it's going to end up being a Crothersville East Prairie bout. But who's going to win that one? Tentatively, I'm going to say Crothersville, but I don't honestly know.
Yeah, I tell you what, East Prairie Scott City this week is going to be. I think that's going to be a good game. Scott City beat them week 1, 22-0. Now I don't think they've. I think East Prairie's improved, leaps and bounds since then. And I don't know. I think Scott City, they got punched in the mouth this week, like we just said. Can they get that 2 weeks in a row? Because East Prairie, that's what they're going to come out and do, is be physical and there's a chance that Scott City could come out and win that game. Obviously, they beat them once already this year, but my money would be on East Prairie. Yeah,
mine too. Like we said, East Prairie they've just improved so much, and Scott City has not improved.
Yeah.
They've played that same inconsistent game all throughout the year, and that's good enough to get you 5 wins, but I don't think it's good enough to get you past an East Prairie team that's this good.
No, I'm going to make a prediction. I don't think that Underwood's going to get almost like 300 yards last time they played, or what, they had like 250 yards or something. He had a ton of yards. I don't think he's going to get. He may get 100, 150, but he won't get 200 yards. I promise you.
Yeah, this is going to sound very cynical of me, but it's easy to make it's easy to make a ranking for having a high yardage when you're the only person who touches the ball every single game. Yeah. Not to say that, hey, if you can run the ball and do well with it, good on you. Keep that stat, take it to wherever you're going to school at after high school. But to me, I don't know.
Yeah, I think the same thing that worked in week 1 is not going to work in first round of districts. I just don't see that working. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I just don't see it.
What do you think the outcome of this Kelly New Madrid County Central game is going to be, though?
I think it's, they played monsoon weekend. They're playing in the rain, but I think it's about the same. I think New Madrid's offensive line and defensive line just takes control of the game just like they did the first time. That's where that game was won, and I think that's where this one will be won. When New Madrid gets their athletes out in space, Kelly can't catch them. And so I think New Madrid wins this game, fairly easily, just because the line controls the game.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, after what I saw them do against Portageville, I mean, I don't feel like Kelly's going to be able to do much against New Madrid. All right, moving on to Class 3. This one is pretty clear to me.
Yeah, I mean, you got Dexter as the top seed, and they've already beaten Park Hills. I mean, I think for me, it's who are they going to play in that championship? Are they going to play Park Hills or are they going to play St. Genevieve? Because Park Hills and St. Genevieve, they played that overtime game earlier this year that Park Hills, eked out. And it's always tough to beat a team twice in the same year. So I expect that to be I expect them to beat each other up in that semifinal. And then Dexter will get either Fredericktown or Potosi. I would think that they would, pretty much have their way in that one to get to the championship. So, I mean, Dexter's obviously the favorite here, but I'm just kind of curious. I'm more curious as to who they're going to play in the championship.
Yeah, I mean, that's the big contentious thing, too, is that, they played St. Gen last year, and that game ended,
It
was close.
Different teams this year, but you're right. I mean, if I'm Dexter, if you're Dexter, let me pose this question to you. If you're Dexter, would you rather face the team that you've already faced, or would you rather face the team that you haven't faced?
I would say I'd rather face St. Gen at this point.
That's the same as me. I would rather face a team that hasn't seen me.
And I don't know if it's that strategic aspect of it, or if it's also just like, I don't want to feel, because everybody says how hard it is to beat a team twice, and how much does that affect you as a player going into a game too, of just like, well, now we got to play them again. I hope they haven't figured us out. And not to say that Dexter's going to get the yips and lose a game like that, but it's a factor.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would much rather play a team that I haven't played, just because, they haven't came out. Park Hills knows how physical that Dexter is. They've played them. They know what adjustments they might need to make. And, St. Genevieve has not done that yet. So they're not, it's a lot different watching a game on film than actually, playing it. So, I think I would rather play St. Gen just for that aspect. Dexter's, I think, obviously the clear favorite in this district, one way or the other. But yeah, I think St. Gen would be my ideal opponent if I was Dexter.
I would say so. I mean, I was by the Park Hills bench while they played Dexter, and pretty much by the end of the game, the thing every player was saying is, "We'll see him again." So, I mean, I don't think Park Hills is definitely scheming to play Dexter again. So, I would rather play. If I was Dexter, I'd rather play St. Gen.
Yeah, you see it a lot in basketball more than football. With you see somebody earlier in the year, and you're like, okay, we know what adjustments we need to make to beat them now, and it's easier to make those adjustments, and it's easier to teach to your guys what you need to do once you when they've already seen it as well. It's a little bit easier to get it across to them as just when you see something on film. Yeah,
I would say it's. I think of games like this in terms of like NFL too, of just like what if we had like a 17 game season, something like that, with teams playing each other multiple times. That might have some different outcomes than we're expecting. But,
right, yeah.
I mean, to Dexter's credit too, they wouldn't have to play a ton of teams twice just because of location.
Right.
I mean, how many times are they going to play Fredericktown and Potosi?
Yeah.
As compared to like Kennett.
Right.
But no, I think Dexter's a clear favorite. Who they're going to play in the championship, I mean, I want them to play St. Gen just because I want to see a new game. But if they play Park Hills, I'm not going to be surprised by that either.
No, absolutely not.
Moving on to Class 4. I don't know. I think Festus is clear winner for this.
Yeah, Festus is a clear favorite. Sikeston has Hillsboro, and in this week coming up at Hillsboro. Don't sleep on this Sikeston maybe keeping this game close. Hillsboro's starting quarterback who goes to North Dakota State, he's out. I mean, he's missed the last 2 games, and they've been beaten. Poplar Bluff just beat Hillsboro over the weekend. They're not playing very well at all. And so it's kind of I think that Sikeston people are happy they're playing Hillsboro more than North County because, they're getting a Hillsboro team that's kind of beat up a little bit. And, so I think Sikeston keep it close. I don't think they can win it. They don't play very well on the road. I don't think they can win it, but I think they're going to keep it close, a lot closer than I think some people think after Hillsboro is just, beating their tails, last couple of years just pretty badly. This is not the same Hillsboro team.
I mean, hey, if you can get a win in districts, that's
yeah, and it happened for them last year. Last year they were in, I believe, the 3-6 game, went and played Perryville and beat Perryville.
Well, I was about to say, not to shot call too much, but let's say hypothetically Sikeston does beat Hillsboro and then they play Perryville. How do you think that game turns out?
I think Sikeston can beat Perryville. I mean, they proved it last year, and I think this year's Sikeston team is better than last year's.
Now this is a Perryville team that played St. Vincent pretty close.
Yeah, I've seen Perryville play over the years. I've seen highlights of them this year, and I saw them play last year. I was just not that impressed. I mean, they're when they play St. Vincent, that's a huge rivalry game in city. It was a real muddy game when they played this year. A lot of rain at the beginning of that game, so that obviously changes things, especially when you're St. Vincent and you throw the ball a lot. So I think that played a little bit in it. But at the end, they still couldn't pull it out. And I'm not saying that the Sikeston would win, but I mean I think that they would. Definitely, I don't think it's going to be like a big blowout or anything. I think it would be a close game, and I think that Sikeston would have just as good a chance. I know that they wouldn't be afraid to go up there and play them after they beat them last year. So,
okay, I'll take your word on it, Dave.
I mean, I don't think Sikeston gets past Hillsboro. I mean, to be honest, and I think Hillsboro probably. Hillsboro Perryville. I don't know who wins that game, but neither one of those teams are going to be able to beat Festus, I think, especially if Hillsboro's not full strength. So, them losing their quarterback who's going to North Dakota State, he's probably one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the state. That's a huge, huge loss for them, and they're kind of feeling the effects of that.
I mean, well, that is what it is at that point, though. Moving on to Class 5, Cardinal Ritter's lost a game, which I was not expecting.
Yeah, the Luther North, though. Luther North's a really, really good team. They're probably, Luther North probably has a good chance to win a state championship again this year. They won one last year. So that's not a huge surprise. Cardinal Ritter, I still think they roll through this district. Cape Central is going to have to be full health to beat them and have some things go their way. And I just don't think they can do it.
Is that a puncher's chance game?
That's a puncher's chance game. I think that the key for them is they've got to get their running backs back all healthy, and if they don't, then you just because if you can't mix it up, Cardinal Ritter's just too many athletes for Cardinal Ritter. You just can't. And I don't think they match up very well with Cardinal Ritter either. After Cardinal Ritter just dominated Jackson and Jackson dominates Cape, I'm like, it's hard to see it. Plus, you're going into the game knowing, how good Cardinal Ritter is. Cardinal Ritter beat them last year by 25, 30 points. And I see about the same this year.
Yes, I think getting your running backs healthy is important, but I think getting your defense, because that's where Cape failed against Jackson was Jackson ended up just being able to run the ball on them, like destroy them, dismantle them. So Cape's got to get their defense ready for this game. Get points on the board, of course. You want that buffer space, absolutely. But, I haven't seen Cardinal Ritter play since they played Jackson, but they destroyed Jackson. So,
yeah, I don't think you're not going to slow Cardinal Ritter down. Even last night they lost, or Saturday, or I guess Friday night, they lost 50-48. Even in a loss, they're scoring a ton of points. You have to be able to outscore. I think the only way to beat Cardinal Ritter is outscore them. And because you're really not going to stop them. And, you hope they turn the ball over a couple of times. Like I said, you got to have some things go your way, but you got to be able to score pretty much every time you get the ball. And if you can't do that. I just don't know. And Cape was able to score with them a little bit last year, but they just couldn't score enough.
Yeah, we've been talking about it ever since week one. Is that Cardinal Ritter, like, a lot of people in Cape feel like it's not fair that Cardinal Ritter is in that district, but
it is what it is.
What it is.
You can't change it now. So, you're gonna have to beat them at some point. If you want to get to where you want to get, you're gonna have to beat them at some point. And I know you'd much rather beat them in a state or meet them in a state championship game than a district championship game. But fact of the matter is, if you want to win a state title, you're going to have to beat them. So, face them when you can.
It's so funny because Cape is such a tough luck team at this point, is that all their wins against every local team has been pretty definitive. And it's like, of course you won that game. But all their losses and all their potential losses have been like, well, you got to be just a little bit better to do that. And it's just like, well, what's going to become good enough?
Yeah. Chances are they're going to finish 10-2 with losses to Jackson and Cardinal Ritter. That's tough 2 losses. And,
but think about that. 10-2. Most teams around here would kill for 10-2.
Yep. And they're going to be getting, you didn't beat Jackson. You didn't beat. It's tough to be a Cape Central coach and fan right now.
I guess this is the only team to talk about really on this listing is let's talk about Jackson being 7-2, having a bye week and taking on either Lindbergh or Fox.
I think, Lindbergh, if they play Lindbergh, which I'm pretty sure they will, that's the former coach Norman, who used to be at Jackson. He'll bring them in there. They're going to run the ball. They're not going to throw it very much. I think Jackson's defense takes care of them. I think they're going to be too much in that game. And then they play Seckman, and Seckman's undefeated. They're a good team. It's who knows? I would think that Jackson would have a very legitimate chance of winning that game. I think it would be a game that kind of would go down to the wire. I think that'd be 2 pretty much evenly matched teams. And then once you get out of there, you run at Class 6, man, you're running against some really, really tough teams. I think it's probably CBC. I think I guess it would be the quarterfinal or quarterfinals. I'm not sure exactly how that plays out, but they would have, I think, CBC in the next round. And I think there you kind of run out of chances. CBC's different level, but yeah, if you can get out of district, that's a great year for Jackson, and they have I think they got a very legitimate shot.
I think they're expected to win districts at this point.
I think they expect to win districts. I think Seckman probably thinks something different, but they've beaten Seckman in the last few years, and they've. Again, Seckman knows what Jackson has, and Jackson knows what Seckman has. They're very familiar with each other, and they usually play some pretty good games. So, it could be playing up at Seckman. That obviously is an advantage Seckman probably. But again, it's. Anything could happen in that one. I would think that they're the class of that district. I would think, and I would be shocked if they weren't playing for the championship here in a few weeks.
Yeah, districts is from what I can see from just this tentative pre-first week of districts, it looks competitive. You can say that in some places. I don't know. It seems like it's going to be a fun year. I'm actually looking forward to what's going to happen after districts. That's going to be a different story for a lot of these teams. Yeah. But for where we're at right now, I feel like Class 2 is probably going to be the most fun to watch. Everything else, it'll shake out how it shakes out.
Yeah, I feel like for at least the first this week coming up and the next week, it's almost like, could we just hit the fast forward button and just kind of just move quickly?
I think you're just ready for basketball.
That's not true. I'm really ready for some really good competitive games. And I just don't feel like we're going to have a lot of good competitive games, especially this week. I don't think that there's going to be. I'm like wishing for some, but I don't know if there's any really going to be like super competitive games in this first week of districts. And then you look into the second round of districts, which is like still the first round for Class 1. And so that week, you still, Class 1, you figure you're kind of going to have some blowouts there. And some of these in class, in the semifinals. I'm interested in a Crothersville East Prairie game. I see what East Prairie can do against Crothersville. But New Matter, say they play Valley Catholic. I would think Valley probably would roll in that one. Go. Dexter Fredericktown or Potosi. I would think that I just feel like there's still these first 2 weeks. I just feel like we're going to have more blowouts than we're going to have have interesting games.
There's a malaise to it.
Yeah. and it's like, it's just the build up to the actual district championship games. And it seems like even when you have two teams that kind of one out matches the other in a district championship game, it still seems like there's some intrigue to it. There's some, even close, a game will be close just out of nowhere. It seems like, just games that will surprise you. And just, it never really seems to happen too much until that championship round.
Yeah. I mean, you think about like the discussion we had about, Class 3, that's the one that I think everybody's going to have their eyes on too, is that whether it's St. John or Park Hills, everybody wants to see who Dexter's going to end up playing. But
yeah. But if you look at the district championship game, there's some Valley, Crowsville again. On a maybe a night that it's not a monsoon.
Yeah.
That'd be a fun game to see too.
That's what I've been hoping for. I can agree with your point. I want to see these bigger games play out. I'm a little bit excited for basketball though, if I'm being honest.
I'll be excited for basketball once our teams start dropping out in the playoffs, because sometimes that goes pretty quick once they get out of district play. That usually goes pretty quick for a lot of the Southeast Missouri schools. So that's when, hey, basketball's tomorrow. All right, let's go. Yeah. I'm really excited for to see how these teams play out. Some of these good teams, Dexter. I'm really excited to see what they do. Crothersville. I'm really excited to see how they can play out here. But some of these other teams, it's just a matter of time till they are playing basketball.
I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that we do not have a game this week on A-Corp Sports. We are also taking a bye week. So, hey,
there you go. There's nothing wrong with that. Get rest up because, hey, once basketball starts, there is no rest.
No, that is a looming dot on the radar. And we talked about what our plans are going forward. Typically, we cover the Riverbend Classic. That's still on the schedule, but things might shift around depending on how districts and football goes.
Yeah. Football you kind of have to keep an eye on those football teams if they're in semifinals and stuff. So yeah, that makes sense.
All right, that has been the SEMO Sports Zone this has been our 10th episode.
Wow, it's flown by.
Now we're moving right along.
Yeah.
But we thank you for listening, and we'll catch you next week.